Hey everyone, this is Bobby at Copel TV Repair with a video today that's going to be a mix-up of LED troubleshooting guide that is definitely not Polish and a specific information about LG 65UH5500, which is an LED TV that gave me trouble because of the way it is set up, and I'm pretty sure it will give trouble to many others. So I will start with the description of this one and plug into commands into a general troubleshooting process for LED TVs. So the weird thing about this one is when you plug it in, it starts blinking on the back, on the front LED, and it comes up for a, oh, maybe I need to power it on. So when you power it on, it starts blinking, the LED on the main board comes up, and I don't know if you saw it, but the backlights came for a very brief moment, maybe a second or two. I'm going to do it again. I think I don't need to power on, so you can see the backlights through the holes on the board. No, that was too fast. Unfortunately, it remembers it, and I have to discharge it and let it run for a while. But anyhow, it comes up, it lights up for a second. There is no image on the screen. The TV is laying itself, and you can't see much. But the backlights do come up for a second, and then it goes off again. Let me see if the backlights will come this time. It also makes a short buzzing sound when the lights come up. There you go. I probably didn't see it. This is where the lights will come up. I wasn't focusing on the proper place. Forgive me for these several things. So I'm discharging it, and I will do it again. And in the meantime, I want to say this is an unusual configuration for most LED TVs. I'm doing it again. I'm restarting. For most LED TVs, this is where we are looking, and I'm powering on. Nope, didn't want to do it. No, you can see the lights. I don't know if the video caught up some of the other places where the holders and the supporters are translucent, and you can actually see the light coming up. But anyhow, this is an unusual configuration where the LED driver gets power from the power board and then routes power to the main board. A whole lot more usual scenario for any LED TV. And this video is for LED TVs and not for plasmas and not for organic LED TVs. It is with about backlit or edge lit. And the difference is whether the lights that provide the LEDs that provide the light for the screen are on the back panel or on top or bottom of the panel. The classic configuration is a power board that goes to the main board, and either embedded in the power board, as in this case is an LED driver, or it's a separate board that gets separate power from the power board and into the panel. It is, at least for me, very rare a configuration like the one on this LG, where the power goes through the LED driver, and out of the LED driver you can see the individual wires here with however many circuits. You can actually see it on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are 6 circuits at least designated. We don't know whether they're connected in series. Oftentimes they are, and this can be producing one single output voltage. But looking at those, you have the 6 coils. That's pretty safe bet that you have 6 circuits of individual LED drivers, and each one of them will be something like 50, 60, 70 volts or whatever it is. And in cheaper TVs, they're all connected in series, and there will be just one output that will be of much higher voltage, 200, 300, whatever low thing. And there are pros and cons to doing it one way or another. But the question here is, what is the problem with that TV? Is it the main board? Is it the power board? What is it? The single flash in the beginning suggests a lot towards bad LED, but most of the TVs, and it's a good technique, and one of the very first things you want to do is they can usually run without the backlights. Not all of them, some of them will not allow you to do it, but because there is no feedback needed for the proper function of the TV, there is no feedback from the screen. It can be implemented, but it costs more, and it's not really critical for the functionality, meaning if the backlight does not work, customer pretty well knows it. And so many TVs, but not all, do not have any type of feedback that if the LEDs are not working, be them open or shorted, the LED driver, which works on a fairly low power, and even if the LEDs are shorted, it just shuts off many TVs, and the TV can work without nothing on the screen. But some are designed, whether on purpose or by side effect, so that they do not start properly. Now on this one, the question is again, do we have a main board that is bad and starts and cannot start? Could have been a power surge entered the HDMI ports, could have been surge could have entered the lamp port or the tuner. Could have been the board just started getting warped because of the heat and the main processor started playing tricks. Could it be the power board that is not raising power voltage? So many, or could it be the LEDs? And there's so many ways and so many things to do. And one of the most simple things to do with some TVs, as I have said and many have shown in many other videos, this applies for most of the Samsung LED TVs, not plasmas, not organic LEDs, LED TVs, where it has a bunch of LEDs on the edge in this case, or in the back in this case. And you can tell by this relatively simple, well, the best way to look at it is to know it is to look up the model if you don't know. But the simplest way to check if the power board is good, and along with that if the LEDs are good, is to simply disconnect power from the main board. This is the power, this is the main board. And what is happening is the backlight comes up. I'm going to be plugging it now so that you can see the difference. The design of the Samsung LED TVs, the vast majority of them, is so that when you connect the power to the main board, it shuts off the LED driver that is in the power board or outside. And again, I'm removing it. You can see, hopefully, the light here. This is disconnected. I'm plugging it in now. And it's, there you go, it went off. This is so much easier to see in a naked eye, in a normal room light. It's instant. So for Samsung TVs, this, if it comes up, tells you the backlights are good and the power board is most likely good as well. However, this does not work for most of the LG TVs, unfortunately. And if you try to do the same, nothing's gonna happen. In other words, let's plug that one in and see if we will get anything out of it. And just plugged. I'm starting it up. Should be able to see it now. Coming up for a second. Yep, there you go. You saw it flashed and went off. And if we can try to do the exact same thing, in this case, how would you really do it? You can't disconnect that because this is the LED driver. You can disconnect the main board from the LED driver and see what happens. And nothing happens really, and not surprising. That doesn't tell us, again, this is LG, they're different design. It doesn't tell us whether the power board and the LEDs and the LED driver, but drivers go bad really rarely. It's possible, but it's not. So what else can we do? One thing to see whether the main board is working, because that is sometimes the case, is to simply attach to it. And I'm skipping a step here that I should tell you about, but this is really simple to do. You just attach any USB. You can just plug in literally a USB drive with an LED on it to see whether it works. I shouldn't bother connecting the HDMI at all, just the USB. And again, try to power on. I still have the standby light. Let's see if it will respond if I... Okay, it's trying to put up, and what I'm trying to see is whether there is something coming up, whether this LED on the USB will ever come up. It doesn't come up, and that tells me that board is never powering on to a point where it actually stays on. And on many TVs, even if the backlight does not work, the main board can come up, and if you have something hooked up like that, it's possible to actually start hearing music. That was my goal here, and at first I figured this main board may be bad. At that point, I went to the power, and one of the very major things you want to see in every power board, that is, as long as the TV has any lights and refuses to start or anything like that, is where those big capacitors are. They're in parallel, and what's going to happen is when the board is activated, there will be about 400 volts on them. And this is good. This is 388, which is pretty stable and pretty close to 400. So that tells me that circuit, which pretty commonly goes bad, especially when there's a power surge, the one that raises the voltage, which when the TV is turned off, if I remove that connector, or if I disconnect the main board, the voltage in those will be around 160 volts. When the TV starts waking up, there is a little pin signal that comes from the power board to this, from the main board to the power board, and this is true for a lot of pretty much all power boards. Here it's called STB. That's unusual. That usually means something else, but who am I to tell you how to label their boards? This, when it receives back anywhere between 2.8 and 5 volts, it wakes up that circuit. It's called power factor correction circuit, PFC. It raises voltage from 160 to nearly 400, 390 or so. It wakes a bunch of other voltages that are needed for the rest of the TV, and basically it stays awake. Now, the fact that this is constantly on tells me that there is a power signal coming back. And I can run a little bit more tests here, but I'm going to cut the short short because this is taking a reasonable amount of time, and I'm holding up, and I know that. And you probably don't want me to be talking so much. But the long story short is, it's interesting to see, and you can learn a lot about those signals that are labeled here on the board. So this board outputs 80 volts, which are going to be needed not for the power board, that's too high of a voltage, and not for the main board. It's way too high voltage for a main board. The 80 volts go to the LED driver, and there is also 13 volts that it reports. And this is what goes to the main board, and the main board internally lowers them to whatever other voltages it needs for the normal functioning of the processors, memories, etc. 5 volts, 3.3, 1.8, 1.0, whatever it needs, whatever it is designed to. When the TV is waking up, when I press that button here and tell it to wake up, it sends a signal back. As I said, that signal comes at this STB. It raises up, and the power board wakes up, and then this board also wakes up the LED controller and so many other things. So the way apparently it does wake up the LED controller, because we see it coming up for a split second. So if you look at that, there is a signal on the left, on the bottom leftmost side, that says DRV on. That would be driver on, and this is an LED driver. Basically all it does, in addition to passing power from the power board to the main board through here, some of it just passes through. And some of it, given the 80 volts from here and a signal driver on, wakes up the 6 circuits with constant current driver for the LEDs for the backlight. And the signal that does that is called DRV on, and here is a simple idea. You just pull that one out, if you can. And I'm afraid I screwed up and it's not easily pulled out now. I was prepared to show you that. Let me see if I can pull it off. Nope, and it will be difficult. I'm going to pause for a second here and just remove that pin, that cable driver on, and I will continue. Here I am back. So I just pulled that, and the way you pull it is you just use something really sharp to stick under that little tag here. I'm sorry, my English is not good enough. That simple blocking, and then you just pull. So you lift that plastic with something sharp and you pull the cable, and there it is. The cable goes out. So now I'm putting that back on. This is still on, the USB, and I'm just going to restart the TV. So what is happening now is the main board, even if it tries to tell this controller to wake up, it won't, because it never makes it to the control. Though there are two possibilities. Sometimes that will mean automatic waking up. If you pull the cable out, like with the Samsung, it might actually have the opposite effect. It can be always on. And one way to know is just to try. And this is what's happening. Again, I have the red light trying to start. It should flash. No, sorry, it cannot flash because I'm off, but the main board